Sleep is like nutrition in a lot of ways. It's both hugely important and it's an area that a lot of people can improve. Now, I've been looking at people's sleep data for the last couple of years using Morpheus, and I can definitely tell you across the fitness community, sleep is a big area where I think people can improve in order to get better results from their training. And there are a few different reasons about why sleep is so important to recovery. The biggest one here, as we look at how sleep promotes recovery, is that it impacts your hormone levels. When you don't get enough sleep, your anabolic hormones, the ones that are causing protein synthesis to turn up and thus more energy and more time spent in the recovery zone, is happening less and less. And the catabolic hormones like cortisol and glucocorticoids are being driven up, and this will cause your body to be more catabolic. And again, catabolic means breaking tissues down, and anabolic means building tissues back up. Now, our goal, of course, is to create new, stronger, more resilient, more efficient tissues throughout our body as we train. That's, again, how our body improves from a physiological standpoint and how our conditioning gets better. But if our body is not directing the energy towards the recovery side and our body is spending more time in the catabolic end, then ultimately we're not going to see the same progress. So just like nutrition, it can be a limiting factor in the gains you get from your training. If your nutrition is not dialed in, if your sleep aren't dialed in, and oftentimes they are related, then you are simply going to sabotage your recovery, and they both have an impact on each other. We know very clearly that if you lack sleep, you are more likely to make impulsive nutrition decisions and less likely to have good control over your different habits and routines. So again, we want to make sure that both our sleep and our nutrition are dialed in because they will complement each other if they are. Now, another thing that people don't talk about very often, but which is also really important, is that sleep also plays a role in your ability to develop from a technical standpoint. So if you're an athlete, you need to improve your technique. Technique is, again, and skills are what pay the bills, as they say. So if you don't improve your technique, you're probably not going to improve as much as if you do, obviously. So sleep is a process where the body learns and refines motor patterns. So as you practice throughout the day, it's during your sleep where the gains and improvements in motor patterns are actually happening as the brain refines its motor strategies. So it's very similar to training. As you lift weights or you do conditioning or whatever, it's in the process between workouts where the improvements in strength and conditioning and everything else are made. It's the same thing with learning and perfecting skills. You don't get better at throwing a ball while you're throwing the ball. You get better in between the times that you are throwing the ball or hitting the bat or hitting the ball with the bat or throwing punches or whatever skills you're trying to develop. Those develop in between the times you're practicing. So sleep is a vital role and it plays a big piece in that. And if you're not getting enough high quality sleep, you aren't just sabotaging yourself from a recovery or conditioning standpoint, but you're also hurting the skill development. Now, again, sleep is also a huge topic, and I could spend an entire course talking about sleep. There are multiple courses and books talking about sleep. So again, it's kind of beyond the scope here for me to dive into every element of sleep. But like nutrition, I want to cover the three main pieces, the three keys to getting better sleep while you're going through Metamorphosis program and beyond. And I can point you to some additional resources at the end of this. So first, and to me this is most important, all right, you have to create the right sleeping environment. And that means the darkness in your room, the temperature in your room, the bed that you're sleeping on, the noise, hopefully, or lack thereof in your room. Your sleeping environment is the thing that's going to have the biggest impact on the quality of sleep that you get. It's going to impact how quickly you are able to go to sleep. It's going to impact how well you're able to stay asleep. And it's going to impact the quality of the sleep you get while you are asleep. So first and foremost, do a survey of your room. How light is it in the room? How light does it get in the mornings? What temperature do you keep your room at? Do you have any temperature controls? If you're in a hot area of the world and it's the middle of summer and you can't cool your room down, your sleep will pay a tremendous price for that. How comfortable is your bed? When is the last time you replaced it? If you're going to spend thousands of dollars on your vehicles and toys, you should spend the money that it takes to get a really high quality bed. And it's really important for your overall health, well-being, and certainly your conditioning. So the place I always have everybody start when it comes to sleep is the survey of their sleeping environment. And oftentimes there are little things you can do to improve it. Get blackout blinds, use a white noise machine if it's too loud, get an AC unit of some kind if it's too hot, right? Just making changes to your sleeping environment can make a really big difference. So you have to start there because it is the foundation for everything else when it comes to sleep. Now, the second thing that I can tell you after looking at a lot of data and talking to a lot of people over the years is that nutrition is also a big part of that sleep, like I mentioned. And the biggest piece here is stimulants. I found over and over again, people consistently underestimate the impact of stimulants on their sleep. And this means they use them too frequently, close to their bedtime. Even though you may not feel like that cup of coffee at 4 p.m. is impacting your sleep at, let's say, 10 or 11 p.m., there's a chance that it is. And it's very consistently the case, again, that people are having caffeinated type beverages too close to their bedtime in my experience. So really easy rule of thumb is no stimulants or alcohol, which I know is a big one here, within about 5 to 6 hours of bedtime. Alcohol in particular, people like to think of it as a sleep enhancer because it makes you tired or drowsy, but it's actually more like a sedative. It worsens your sleep quality. So that glass of wine before bedtime can actually decrease your memory, your motor learning, and slow your recovery down. So sorry if you'd like to have a glass of wine or whatever before you go to bed. The reality is that's not a great strategy for your recovery or your conditioning. So again, if your goal here is to get as much out of the conditioning program as possible, you're going to want to ditch the alcohol and you're going to want to ditch the stimulants within at least 5 to 6 hours of when you go to sleep. And then from there, again, these two play a huge role. But the biggest thing too is just being consistent in your sleep-wake cycle. The more good habits you can create, the more consistently you can go to bed and wake up around the same time, the higher quality of sleep you're going to get. And your body likes to have rhythm. Your body likes to have the same processes, the same schedule, same routines and habits. It performs well in this type of an environment. It performs much less consistently well in random and varied situations where your sleep is constantly changing from day to day or from week to week. So again, I know life happens and there are considerations here, but anything you can do to develop good sleep habits and patterns will go a long way towards increasing your overall sleep quality and thus your recovery. Now, when it comes to sleep too, we can also talk about sleep trackers here for a minute because there are lots of different sleep trackers. They've really proliferated over the last few years and become a big part of what people are using these days. So the reality is there's lots of types. There's wearables, of course, and then there are non-wearables that can go in your mattress or go in different parts of your room. Really, I think this comes down to preference. If you don't mind wearing something and you want to have a one-size-fits-all device, let's say an Apple Watch, for example, that can do more things than just sleep tracking, then it makes sense to wear that to bed and to use that. If you can't stand sleeping with something, there are options. There are different devices out there that can go in your mattress. There are entire mattresses themselves that can track your sleep. There are endless different varieties out there. So again, you want to make sure you're choosing something that's based on your preference. Don't get a sleep tracker on your arm or your wrist if you're just not going to wear it because it's not going to do you any good. The other thing, like I said, is there's a difference between something that integrates and is a part of your daily life, like an Apple Watch that you're going to use for other things besides tracking sleep, versus something that's only designed for sleep tracking. So pick something here, again, that you're going to consistently use. This is really the most important thing. I would say, in general, most sleep trackers are fairly good at getting the total hours of sleep and not so great when it comes to estimating sleep stages or quality of sleep. You have to remember, these are all essentially made up numbers by manufacturers. The reality is you cannot get really good data on sleep stages through any of these devices. They're all just estimating sleep based on movement or based on audio and things like that in the room. They're not directly measuring sleep, so their ability to directly measure sleep stages is also severely limited. Choose something that's going to give you the best, most comfortable experience that you're going to use, and chances are it'll give you a good amount of total hours of sleep that'll help you at least get a really good baseline of what you're doing and what you're not doing. The other thing, like I said, if you're using Morpheus, Morpheus integrates with a lot of different sleep trackers. It integrates with anything with Apple Health, obviously, so the Apple Watch or any devices that post the Apple Health Kit. Same thing with Google and Garmin and Fitbit. Morpheus will pull this data in. And this is a screenshot of the Morpheus Coach app, my own sleep here. And you can see one of the things that I strive for and I get right probably more often than not, because I do put too much attention on it, is my sleep consistency in terms of how many hours of sleep I get per night. And that comes back to the last one, which is my consistency in when I go to sleep and when I wake up. But using a sleep tracker, again, part of what you should be looking for here is not just each day, but the overall pattern. And take a zoom out view of not just 2 days ago, but 2 weeks ago or across 2 months. and really give yourself a report card on how consistent you are in your sleep patterns, in your sleep and wake cycles. The more consistently you can do the right things, the easier it's going to get. So it gets momentum. If you can get on the right track and stay there for a while, it gets easier and easier to build those good habits, and your recovery will thank you for it. Then last but definitely not least, of course, is price, comfort, just overall durability. Those are also things you're going to want to take into consideration as you are making a good choice for a sleep tracker. So again, sleep trackers I think are valuable largely because they bring awareness. And if you're not aware of how inconsistent your sleep is, or maybe you are superficially, but until you actually see the numbers on a screen or you see the patterns, a lot of people don't realize it. And again, using the Morpheus coaching platform, I've been able to pull sleep data in from a lot of different people I've worked with, and really hundreds of people across the world. And I can tell you we've done a lot of data analysis on this and are continuing to do this. Sleep is the single biggest area we are seeing that people are lacking. So you really want to shoot for 8 to 8.5 hours a night of good, high quality sleep in order to maximize your recovery. And we're seeing consistently that people are simply not getting that amount. They're getting less than that on a very consistent basis. And like I said, not only do you want the right amount of sleep, but you want the best quality sleep, and you want the most consistency in your sleep-wake patterns to drive that. And again, that's something we're seeing consistently as a weak point for a lot of people. So if you are not able to consistently do that right now, then this is something you can be working on throughout the Metamorphosis program, because I guarantee you it'll pay off not just in this conditioning program, but it'll pay off for your entire fitness process moving forward as well. Now, last two is sleep supplements. I'm going to give you just a few tricks of the trade, or a few things that I like to use. Again, I think supplements are just that. They're supplementary to all the other things I just mentioned. If you don't have a good sleeping environment, if you don't have good habits and routines, if you're having stimulants before bedtime, supplements will do nothing for you. So these should be an adjunct or an add-on to an already good sleep program. The first one I use, this is a lot of times I use for travel. So if I'm traveling across time zone, this MZS melatonin, taking a couple hours before bedtime, particularly again when you're crossing time zones, can be very, very beneficial in my experience for getting on a different sleep schedule as you are traveling. I don't typically rely on it every night, but if there are times where I'm not getting the sleep I want, then will throw this in there, and it does make a difference. The other one here is calcium magnesium calm by Natural Vitality. One serving 30 minutes before bedtime. This one I do pretty consistently, and I've had other people do as well, and it can make a big difference. It really is just about calming the system down, and there are benefits to using this on a fairly consistent basis. It's safe, it's affordable, it's cheap and easy to use. So it's one you can throw in there if you are having trouble sleeping, and see if it makes a difference for you. And then last but not least is Rhodiola, and this is by Thorne. They're a great company. I've worked with them for a long time. 100 milligrams 3 times a day. It's not necessarily a sleep stimulant or a sleep supplement per se, but just a good overall adaptogen. In other words, it helps the body cope with stress as a whole and can support sleep as a result of that. So again, the most important thing are just getting the 3 big pieces dialed in. If you want some additional resources here, I'm going to tell you some places you can go to learn more. The first is Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. It's well known, it's a bestseller. And has lots of good science. So if you want the science, you want the how and the why, and the under the scenes or behind the scenes, under the hood type look at sleeping, Why We Sleep is a good book to help give you that. If you want more of the practical application, Sound Asleep, the sleeping guide to sleeping well, is my recommendation. Dives really far into the practical side, less of the scientific heavy side that you're going to get from Why We Sleep, and more into really, really good practical application type things to improve your sleep, whatever the case may be in terms of why you're not getting enough of it. And then last but not least, this is not a sleep book, but as I mentioned, I think people's habits and routines are a lot of what typically tend to drive their sleep. And if you're not getting those dialed in, your sleep will likely pay the price. So Atomic Habits by James Clear, you've probably heard of it. It's a best-selling book as well. But it's really valuable, I think, for people to just, again, get their daily routines dialed in, because in my experience, more often than not, it's the hours leading up to your bedtime that dictate the quality of sleep and the consistency of sleep you're going to get. And that's where getting your habits, getting your routines, and getting your lifestyle organized and efficient is really a big piece of driving the consistent sleep puzzle. So again, using all these strategies are going to help you just dial in your sleep. Use data, use trackers to make sure you're keeping yourself honest and accountable, and do everything you can to get as much high quality sleep, or at least 8 to 8.5 hours a night. And I guarantee you, your recovery will improve and your conditioning along with it.